Hi guys, welcome back to the Revive Stronger podcast. I'm your host, as always, Steve Hall, and today I have Alberto Nunez from 3DMJ back on the show. And we had him on about 6 months ago, and he was just starting his contest prep, or he was kind of in the thick of his contest prep, and now I wanted to reflect upon it. He did 4 shows, did incredibly well, brought a fantastic physique to stage, and we're going to reflect upon that, lessons, takeaways, and also what he's going to bring into his next season, his next competitive season, and how he's going to approach his off season as well. And I think there were some really handy takeaways here and some really interesting discussions surrounding the sport of bodybuilding as well. So guys, as a reminder, we do have our ultimate guide to contest prep. So if you want to know how to go about starting your contest prep, the execution throughout, bring your best physique to stage through peaking, and then also going about your recovery phase, we have you covered with this ultimate guide. So if you're interested in that, that'll be found in our shop at Revive Stronger. Otherwise, without further ado, let's get into the chat. Hi guys, welcome back to the Revive Stronger podcast. I'm your host, as always, Steve Hall, and today I have Alberto Nunez back on the show. I can't quite believe it's been 6 months. I didn't know if you knew that, Alberto, but that was the last time we chatted, at least on podcast, and that was episode 326. I'm referencing the episode in case people want to track back, because that was kind of, you were pretty deep into prep at that time, but you hadn't done any competitions. And I was like, I had to get you back on to kind of reflect on those. And it's actually been a while, I guess. You're kind of post-recovery period now and everything like that, recovery diet, maybe in an even better place to be able to chat and converse and feel a little bit more switched on. But I think prep doesn't hit you the same way it hits other people in that regard. You still converse very well. So I thought it was a great opportunity to bring Alberto back on and talk about the season, kind of recap it, and probably gives you another opportunity to smell the roses a little bit, because I don't know how much you've done that personally. So it's great to have you back.
Yeah, it's crazy. You know how that goes. It's like you have all these like selfies and pictures on your phone after a prep, and there's a good frame of time there where like you can't even look at them. You're like, oh, like, especially when you're in the middle of it all, and then like afterwards you're like, whoa, we did pretty good, So I think I'm slowly getting to that point now.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. Although you've also made the point, which I definitely relate to, where I think as a bodybuilder, especially when you're first competing, you want to share all your like bodybuilding pics all the time because they're like the ones that you think you look your best. And then you get to a point where you're like, I don't want to share any of those. Like, I'm embarrassed of that physique. And that's when you know you've grown some.
Yeah. No, that's what we're aiming for, man. It's gonna be a shorter off season, but yeah, I want to get to the point where, before I prep, it's like I can't wait to show you guys like, the upgrades. That's the goal anyways.
And then, so for the listeners this season, am I right in saying you did, or the 2022 season even, you did 4 shows, is that right?
Yeah, I did 4 shows in all.
So the first one was the US WNBF, which I believe was 2nd place, is that right?
The first one was the Universe, so that's where I got, I ended up winning that one.
Oh, that was the NPC Universe, right?
No, not the not the that. I've always wanted to do that, but that one's in July.
Okay, I got those mixed.
Worlds means more to me than an IFBB pro card. Like that's just being real. So it was that one, and then I went to Canada, and I got 2nd place there, and then I did a local NPC show, and then finally Worlds.
Yeah, I got those. I think I got that. The WNBF US one was the one I was thinking of. So. Yeah, you did the one NPC show. How did you find doing that? I think you enjoyed it, didn't you?
Oh, those are so easy, man. Like there's no fuss. Like you literally can sign up the day before, man. Like just as many classes as you want, they'll take your money. So no poly. So that's nice. Dream Tan is banned almost everywhere, and NPC started it, but it's been so far back now that it's couldn't find it on the rules. I got to wear Dream Tan, which is my favorite color, and it goes on in 10 minutes. So it felt like such low-hanging fruit, to the point where I got to sleep in my own bed, because that's something that, you take for granted. Like, if you're an amateur in a decently like populated area, you probably have shows in your backyard. But pro shows, you're going to have to fly to those. So I legit got to sleep in my own bed. I did the morning show, drove back home, hung around, went back. It was just so stress-free.
I remember seeing you driving back, like between the show. I was like, I could never even imagine being able to do that, and again being that stress free. So, but I can for sure see, because like people probably think, oh, for you as a natural competitor, like, your natural polygraphs shouldn't stress you out, but like I feel like they're done in a way that's purposefully stressful anyway. Like, I don't know the ins and outs of them, but every time I've done one, like, they are stressful things, and like, so I can imagine it being nice, just being like, oh yeah, I can just like rock up and do this thing, and there's no one asking anything about anything there.
Yeah, it's I don't know. It's like, have I seen too many movies? But I guess I just associate it with, like, if you're taking a poly, you might have done something shitty,
Yeah.
you know. So only bad people get polyed. I hate polys. I do, like, and I can never really calibrate how I'm gonna feel about it, because there's been times where I'm just like, okay, I just go take care of my poly. I'll be right back. And when I get there, like, your fight or flight systems just like really tick up a little bit. Um, so yeah, no poly. Like, it was, and then the posing, like in NPC, since they have so many athletes, you're like cattle, man. Like, it's like, I think I spent like 5 minutes on stage. Maybe it was probably more like 3. It was just like boom, boom. I think we skipped some poses actually, and get out of there.
That was my experience with, I did, was it the Two Bros, which is like an affiliate with the IFBB, I believe, in the UK. And I didn't do it as they have like their natural one, because I don't know how I feel about that in terms of them trying to kind of get in on some of the natural scene. But I think they're going to struggle because the experience wasn't superb. And one of my biggest grievances was similar to you in terms of time on stage, was just like, they didn't even move us around. It was just like, you stand there, hit every pose, like you said, like barely any time, and then you're off very quickly like cattle, which I think you'll appreciate this. Like, every time, like, you spend so much time in prep, and then you're on stage, you kind of want to be worked.
Yeah, people sometimes they complain about it, but it almost starts to feel like a true athletic competition, because you have to stay disciplined. You're getting fatigued, and the judges, they split hairs, like in the tested federations, between like, okay, we're going to make sure that 6th place goes to the guy that deserves 6th place, and you're up there trying to keep your composure. So it legit feels like a competition sometimes. I mean, I tell most of my guys that compete in tested federations, like, expect about 15 minutes up there. And if you're a pro, they drag it up to 30. Don't be surprised.
Yeah, that's it's mad. And I mean, also for the people in the crowd, I think you want to see the pros up there for a while, because it's just like, these are the creme de la creme. Like, it's outstanding, especially when I was at Worlds, and I didn't see, not this year, of course, but in 2021, I was watching some of the pro classes. I was just like, wow, this is like, I guess it's our Olympia basically. So it's outstanding to see those competitors on stage who you're like, okay, like, this is legit. Like you said, there's levels to this sport, and you see that with the pro class at WNBF Worlds.
Yeah, and physiques change, man. Like, that's the one thing. Like, when people are up there, like, there's guys that just because they're usually better prepared and better peaked and more, they practice their posing more. It's like, whoa, they're really starting to stand out. So you don't really, in some cases, get to know like what is what until like you're 5 minutes in. So you can't do that with the behemoths in NPC, because you have like a 240-pound guy who cut water, maybe is dabbling in some diuretics, and it's almost, they let the bodybuilders go up first. I feel, because they have no idea how long these people can like hold it together for. So that was another perk. It was just like show started at 8:30. I was up there, and there was numerous classes before me, like before 9. It blew my mind.
Yeah, that's fast. Mad. With the shows that you did, was there any particular one that surprised you or stood out to you as, like, I don't know if you had, I guess Worlds for you was the one that you had, like, this is the one you're gunning for, this is where you want to bring your best, but which of them did you like enjoy the most or get the most kind of, I guess, reward from?
They all had something, man. Like, doing one of Nancy Andrews shows, like, she's a legendary promoter. Like, that was a big deal for me. It's like, I felt like I had to get a Nancy Andrews show under my belt. And I remember I was like, oh, like, there was a few names there that were going to be there. And, but then I kept hearing about this Peacock guy, and I'm like, Peacock. Like I knew of Peacock, but I didn't think like he was competing at this show, like the Peacock. And then I see his big ass just walk into the warm up area, and I'm like, oh, okay. Like right away, like I'm like, it's on. Like this is going to be a good test. So that was probably the most memorable experience there. The Canada show, just going up to Canada, and it's beautiful up there. Got to go to Banff. Canadians are so freaking nice with their I'm sorry. And got to meet a bunch of like really really cool people who you talk to online, and you feel like you've known them like forever.
Yeah.
So that was nice. And then Worlds is obviously Worlds. Like that is just one of those things where it's like, even well, I'm going this year, but I think going forward, I just appreciate Worlds so much that I need to find a way to like get out there. And I mean, you got to compete in one, and it's more than just the competition. It's just like we all gather together and reconnect, and like those moments are special for us. So Worlds was definitely, I'd say everything was awesome about this last season, but that was definitely everything I wanted it to be.
Yeah, Worlds, like I can definitely speak to, it's just, for me, I can't even, I think it just culminated all of my kind of bodybuilding journey in one stage, and I definitely want to be able to go out there again. Who knows? Like I don't like to say confidently that I'm going to be there and competing again, because who knows what happens, especially the UK scene just keeps getting madder and madder. So hopefully I'll get the pleasure of being at WNBF Worlds as a competitor again, but I want to be there as a coach and just like a spectator again, because it's just such a fun event. And like you said, there's people who are there who you've spoken to online, and you get to kind of just like catch up and hang out for a bit. So it's such a great time. And you mentioned Peacock. Was that the same show? Brett Freeman was also in that lineup as well, right?
Yep,
and that's you won that show. Is that the one you won?
Yeah, that's the one I won. And I knew that Freeman was going to be a little undercooked for that one. So was I, just slightly.
Yeah.
But I know how Peacock was going to look, but he's just a big dude. Like it hardly matters, man. Like he looks like he plays linebacker in the NFL. Like he's one of those guys that if you take a casual like bodybuilding fan, they'd be like, there's no way that guy's natural. Like he's just a big ass dude.
And it's nice, like when that sort of thing happens, where it isn't all about size, like in bodybuilding at all. I mean, symmetry is a huge component. And the more I'm into it, and especially as a judge, like sitting there and watching when I got to judge some shows, I'm like, oh yeah, I mean, I'm seeing why I'm placing where I'm placing a lot of the time. Like that symmetry card, if someone's got heaps of that, which certainly something you have a good amount of, also muscularity and a lot of condition. So yeah, it's kind of like top trumps in that sense. Like you might have that muscularity card on you, but if you can edge them out on other areas, I think that's where the fun comes in.
And that's why, like, especially with a lot of the people who, from like, just like the casuals from far away that like accuse certain athletes of like being fake natties. It's like, you've never been to a bodybuilding. Like you don't even know how the game is played, bro. Like you need to go to a few bodybuilding shows, natural bodybuilding shows, before you can tell me anything about my sport. Because like if you're viewing natural bodybuilding from some screen, it's like, no, go to 3 world championships, spectate those. And you know what? I think at that point, you could probably have some like fake natty glasses. But like if you've never been to it, like you just don't know. And like, for example, like in my case, like I am known mostly for my conditioning. But the truth is, it's like I'm not the most conditioned guy in the pro circuit. There's guys that are leaner. And what actually makes me moderately successful as a bodybuilder is symmetry. And symmetry is something that like it's not what people think. It's like you have to be there, you have to experience it, and you see that symmetry can be your ulna being too long for your humerus on your side poses. Like whenever you see Jeff Alberts hitting his side pose, like, okay, yeah, he's tapered. That's part of symmetry. But also it's like the limb proportion. Like the limb proportion. It's like everything's like this perfect size, and like your brain is spinning these like mathematical equations for like what is like beauty, what is art. And it's very intuitive. Like even my mom now to this point, she calls it cool in Spanish, but when she goes to natural bodybuilding shows, she's like, oh, that guy's got a very cool physique is the word she would use. she calls it style, I think is the exact translation. I like his style. So yeah, it's like, go see a few natural bodybuilding shows before you start posting up on Reddit and all sorts of bullshit.
Yeah, for sure. No, I completely agree. And yeah, it's one thing to see someone like on stage, like peaked under that stage lighting, and then like, because in their head they're like, oh, but I see this natural guy and he's my friend and he's clothed or whatever, and they think that like they're seeing photos, like it's just such a misconception people get about the sport as well. So yeah, I think that's super important. And yeah, the symmetry thing that got me for a while, where I always viewed symmetry as like, oh, so the upper body should be as proportion to the lower body. I'm like, that's not symmetry. They're like, they call symmetry, but like it's the X frame, and like you said, it's very intuitive. Like people, once you've seen a few shows, you can pinpoint that person who like they have that X frame when they stand on stage.
Yeah, it's the one that, again, it comes just most naturally to us, like humans. It's just something about the taper, about limbs being in a certain proportion, like the muscularity and like how it flows. Like you catch on to that really quick. But yeah, go see some shows, people. Like go see Worlds. Like it's still a cheap thrill. I think it's, in my opinion, like it's some of the best bodybuilding you will see in the planet. I mean, put it this way, it's like, I'd say like Sean Clarita right now in the IFBB, he's somewhere like for sure in like the top 15, like across all weight classes, right? As good as maybe even like in the top 5. When he was doing the natural circuit, that's exactly where he was at, man. Like, so sometimes people are like, hey, it's like, those are the best genetics. And it's like, no. A lot of these guys on this side, it's like their bodies work so well that they've never even considered, like those natural genetic outliers. And this, Steve, like some of the stuff they do, it's like this is a meme. Like you would think, this is how you prep, this is what you do, this is how you train, and it does not freaking matter. Like, so for them, it's like they've never even thought about enhancements, because they're like, I kind of looked this way since I was 14. I don't feel like I need anything. Yeah.
I always bring up this example. I went to a fairly local like BMBF show, and I was watching my client, and this guy just like rocked up, black guy, like just rocked up, walked in, and he was like, is this the like natural bodybuilding show? Like he wasn't really sure. He came like at halftime, and then he didn't even have, my client was like, he didn't even have posing trunks. Like he just had his like own briefs and like rolled them up, and he came out on stage, and it was just like, he took it. It was just, he didn't even really know how to hit the poses. It's just like, he was huge, ripped. It's just like, he just walked off the street and just came in. It's like, those are some of the freaks out there that just don't even really have to prepare like everyone else.
Yeah, no, I've seen homeless dudes that like and they were very homeless. Like you could tell, it's like they've been homeless for a minute, and they look like better than 99% of the gym population. Like for some reason, their body really caters to storing energy and muscles, like for some reason. So yeah, it's a crazy world, man. And I think initially we can all be a little discouraged when we find out that there's people out there that are like 6 standard deviations away from the mean. But like, it's kind of liberating in a way, because you're like, okay, I am what I am now, and I'm just going to do the best with like what I have. And like, honestly, I think sometimes those genetic freaks, they miss out on certain experiences. Like maybe our bodies don't function as straightforward as their bodies, but there's other things that they miss out on too. Like, yeah, I'd love to wear that muscle suit and just make it so that like anything legitimately works. I could, do plyometrics and have these amazing quads. But there's also something about this side too that's quite intriguing and special in its own way.
I don't think it's half probably as rewarding. I guess people always use the analogy of like being born into money. It's kind of a similar thing, like when you make your money from nothing, and then you become a better coach as well. I think when you like know how to decipher these things for yourself, and then you can apply that to others as well. Like you said, though, it would be nice to have those millions or have that physique at least for a time, or eventually get there. And I think this is not an area I thought to take it, but I bet you've had experiences with clients like this, Alberto, and I have as well. And I've experienced it myself, where you are that person who doesn't necessarily like, you doubt yourself and what you're responding to, and like you said, it can be liberating. I think it can be liberating, but for some people it can be they end up questioning themselves and their process and what their methods are. And then maybe you see this person who's just, they're always looking for that silver bullet, the thing they're not doing. I don't know, their coach hop maybe, or they kind of are just doubting themselves. Have you any advice for that person, or have you experienced that yourself?
Yeah, man, that's a tricky situation, right? It's because sometimes these people tend to be overly analytical, and
Yeah.
sometimes they get grief over it. You know, you have someone with much better genetics that's be like, "Hey, you need to chill out." It's like, well, it's easy for you to say, buddy. You know, you can grow a quite symmetrical physique with, I don't know, like 9 movements. You know, but that's you. Like that's certainly not them. Um, yeah, you just have to kind of strike a balance, right? Because I think being curious, being analytical in that way it's definitely your meal ticket if that's the situation you have going. But yeah, it can get to the point where it's causing it's hindering you more than helping you. And honestly, the only way you find out where that sweet spot is you kind of have to go overboard with it, and then like you reel it back, just like everything else. Like we've all done it to some extent with our own bodybuilding, where maybe we're eating 8 meals and we're like, okay, like 4 or 5 meals is the sweet spot, whatever, something like that. But you have to push and be curious, and eventually you'll figure it out. But I think you can't be in a rush to figure things out either, because it's like whatever optimal is, like, you and I, we try to aim for somewhere near that. And then 5 years goes by and it's like, oh, this and that was suboptimal anyways. And here you were trying to like, be sneaky, be like extra prepared, and do all these little things to be optimal. And then it's like, 5 years goes by, didn't really matter that much. So you're never optimal anyway. So yeah, yeah, find peace in that, even though it can be frustrating to think of it that way as well.
Yeah. No, I think that's really well said. And the same for like getting grief for like trying to think about it a little bit harder than other people.
Yeah.
And obviously there's limitations to that. And sometimes I've certainly, like you said, sometimes you have to, like, you think the grass is greener, you think there's a better approach, a better way to do it. You try it and it's like, actually, it's not like much for muchness, or what I was doing before maybe was working better. And I always just try and refer back and like comfort myself and be like, what things do we know, like the basic principles? And so long as it's pretty much aligning with that, like I'm adhering. Actually, me and Pascal talked about it recently. I guess it comes up every now and then, where just like time is the biggest differentiating factor between like competitors. The ones who have been doing it the longest are generally going to be the best.
Exactly. Yeah. And there's comfort in that too. I think for someone who's starting out initially, it's like, you mean, you don't have to wait 10 years. And it's like, well, eventually 10 years will go by anyways. If all things go according to plan, this life is tricky sometimes. It doesn't work that way for everyone, unfortunately. But 10 years goes by, and then you'll be on that side, and you feel like, hey, I earned my stripes in a way. And there's something, yeah. Like I'm just as proud of like being consistent over 2 decades now as I am as like anything else. So you got to earn them stripes, man. And time flies, anyways.
Yeah, for sure. No, it absolutely does. I can't believe we're almost coming into April of this year, and you're probably like, I feel like I just stepped off the stage. Like, what's going on here? Were there any big lessons or takeaways from this season? Anything different to other seasons that you kind of going to take going forward for you?
Yeah, yeah. There's always something, right? So again, it's like you think you're doing optimal, right? And then you go back and you're like, oh, okay, that didn't work out nearly as well. Um, so I think probably first and foremost, I think prep makes you more transparent in many ways. Like the little things that bother you, they bother you more. Like, right? Um, like we talked about this in dogs in our like last podcast, right? It's like, right. Um, so for me, it always kind of it resets me in regards to like, okay, how can I better design my life? Like, what can I do? And a big one for me was I wasn't the best sleeper prior to this last prep, and then this prep, at some point, got me a Fitbit, and I'm like, I'm keep track of this metric a little bit more. I hardly do it now, really. bare wrist, but it was a good way. It's kind of like counting macros,
Yeah.
it's like you do it and then like you kind of set up the behaviors. And that was very eye-opening, was just how much having these fantastic, like people do this with caffeine. It's like they taper off caffeine so they works better during the later stages of the prep. And I think a big one is like, hey, work on your sleep hygiene, like max that thing out so that, okay, maybe peak off season, you're like 9 hours of sleep, whatever. And then that way, when you're deep into a prep, it only downgrades so much. But it was very obvious to me, just how different each day felt when I was like well slept. Like it was easy. Like those days were almost hacks. So I think that's something that, okay, it's like I'm trying to even improve upon that even more during this off season, so that, hey, that's just how I live come next prep. So sleep was a huge lesson. Sleep and then um this is going to sound bizarre to most people, but I got into meditating. I think that is, man, like your computer just needs a reset. Like not this computer, but every once in a while, it's like turn that thing off. And being able to like do that and slow down your thinking and have more control over your mind, I think is especially important when you're prepping, because you know how it goes, man. It's like your brain goes this way, that way, and it brings up all these imaginary scenarios of like the worst things that can happen. So being able to just reel things in and control my own mind was big. And I started off with small amounts, like just like 10 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day. And it's done wonders, just like a lot of things with bodybuilding. Like a lot of the things that we do, like the stress management, the sleep, being selective about the things we put in our body, the exercising, like these are all things that like lend to a better life.
Yeah.
And you hear it said all the time is like bodybuilding should enhance your life. It really should. Like it really should. And I can't see myself living any other way at this point. Like whether I compete or not, it's like I'm gonna be a bodybuilder and just be mindful of how I experience and like live in this world. So the meditating was huge. And then also I guess the last one's just that like you learn to find less invasive ways to get yourself ready for shows. And it's I think most people think of that and they're like, well, then you're just going to come in softer. And it's like, no, not necessarily. You just get more skilled with it. And we definitely, added some things there, and makes the recovery period like so much more efficient. I mean, it was to the point where every time I took my refeeds, I almost felt like I was like, I wouldn't say like 10 out of 10 recovered, but I'd go from like a high 6 to like an 8. So literally like a week after that last show, like that was it. Like there hasn't been no more like, oh, this is recovery. Okay. Oh, this is recovery. Oh, this is normal. Cause that's usually how it works. So just learning to fuck my body up less to get what I want from it. That's been very valuable. But yeah, those were the main things, man. And, you just learn to enjoy it more, like for sure. Like that's huge. Like going back to Worlds, man, like one of my best memories from like the Worlds you did, was just sitting there with like Dirk and everyone else, and we were just eating, So yeah, just being thankful that like we found something that it's our thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense. I don't know if I always like to throw analogies at things, but it's like, I don't know, if you're driving a journey you've never done before, you have to think about every little detail. Am I going to have enough fuel? Like, what's the quickest way to get there? Whatever it might be. Do I have to pay for a toll? Whereas now you've done this journey so many times, you can almost just go in cruise control and just be like, actually, like look out the window and enjoy the view and take it all in. So that makes so much sense. And actually, it's really nice to hear as someone who like competes, because I know like I've had the same experience where it's got nicer and nicer, but I'm not at the point where I've taken it to where you have and have that level of experience and be able to enjoy it to that extent, and hope to get there as well. And yeah, it's nice to hear that, and also nice to know that like people at your level are still looking for ways to improve and like picking these little things up. And I think when you do get that kind of security blanket of food taken away from you, it does reveal the cracks quite quickly. Oh, yeah. So that makes loads of sense. And actually, you brought up one thing, because I recently listened to one of your vlogs where you, or maybe it was somewhere on social media, where you brought up about pushing body weight up. And you said kind of like it's less invasive now to like get to stage condition. From that piece of content, I took that you aren't necessarily going to push to as high an off-season body weight as maybe you had previously. I'd love to hear a bit more about that.
Yeah. So it's kind of like volume. That's been discussed before, that eventually you can kind of isolate what's actually generating progress here. Same thing, I think, when it comes to like, I guess, like a lot of people will mass progress with like these massive surpluses. Yeah. So like they're like volume junkies, but when it comes to calories in a way, instead of just kind of taking what they need the same way you do with volume. And usually people tend to be a little mismatched across the board. Like there's people who maybe overly rely on like the stimulus side of things, but like their life outside the gym is just totally like wacky. And there's people who are the inverse. It's like, okay, like you're this like beautiful lifestyle you have going on, but like you train like a wimp,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, kind of working on both ends, and things like being better about my stress management, being better about my sleep, all these things, and then being like finally getting a better understanding of what's moving the needle when it comes to like my training stimulus. I'm only training 3 days a week, by the way, so
I was going to ask if it was still 3.
Yeah, still on 3. And so, yeah, I'm only taking what I need when it comes to training volume, when it comes to calories as well. But, again, it's like you have to go overboard with these things, kind of like the over analytical person we discussed. Like when it comes to your training volumes, like, yeah, you kind of have to do this. And then you're like, all right, let's reel it in. And the same thing with, maybe how you supply your bulking phases, where it's like, oh, maybe you don't need like a 600 calorie surplus, like to maximize progress. So yeah, I think, I'll still end up being like 20 something pounds over stage weight, but that's definitely like every year I cut off, it seems like 5 pounds on average when it comes to my off-season body weight. So we're getting cleaner about the process. And then also I actually tweeted about this yesterday. Like this was the first time I ever had to wait on my skin to tighten up, like ever.
Yes.
And I've done some insane things to my skin. Like, so for the people who don't, like at some point I got myself up to 250 pounds because that's what I thought I had to do to, I don't know, compete at 200, like just different times. And literally like no loose skin. So like and when it comes to skin, like collagen, it's like I'm 40, but like I don't think I have like an actual wrinkle in my face. So like my skin is like it's good skin. But even then, there was points along the prep where I'm like, I've never had to wait for like skin around my midsection to like tighten up. So I'm gonna play less games with my skin. Loose skin, like for people out there who are thinking I compete, it doesn't really matter that much. It's more of a me thing more than anything. So I'm gonna try to wreck that a little bit less and maybe keep it as tight as I can while not shooting myself in the foot is the goal. We'll see if I actually am able to execute this.
Do you not see the progress you would like? Are you sick of writing your own programs? Or perhaps you need some accountability in order to stick with a plan? Then it's time to start working with us. We at Revive Stronger offer a truly personalized coaching service. You'll get more than just an email with some macros or random cookie cutter program. With Revive Stronger, you will be the center of our attention. You will receive your own fully individualized training protocol alongside a customized nutritional strategy. We create the coaching around your needs, wants, personal preferences, and your own unique lifestyle. Every single week, we delve into your program in order to make appropriate adjustments so that we get the most out of your time and the best possible outcome. We help both female and male athletes to seriously change their body composition by adding more muscle mass and decreasing fat tissue. No matter if you're a competitive bodybuilder or just want to look better, if you need help with your progress and taking your physique to the next level, our coaching is for you. It's time to make a change. Sign up today and let's revive stronger.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I remember seeing, I saw that tweet as well. And I think sometimes I see it around the glutes for male competitors where they have that little bit of loose skin. And
Yep.
Yeah, it's frustrating. But yeah, to have been like, I can't even imagine being as heavy as 250 pounds, and we're like not too dissimilar body weights. I'm like, oh man, to have got up that heavy, which kind of is counter to the point I'm about to make. But I know you're someone who generally lives at a leaner, like you feel better. Like you said, you felt pretty recovered pretty soon after competing. A lot of competitors don't feel good in themselves to perform in the gym and whatever it might be until they are that much heavier over stage weight. So you can't, and I always think what's the kind of match that lights the fire for muscle gain is training and progressively overloading. So if you're able to do that in a leaner physique, like you've just got like a bit of a luxury that other people maybe don't have. And it makes sense over time you've been able to get it leaner too, because you've just been able to do all of these things easier and you don't need that buffer like you did before.
Yeah. No, and I'm big on like setting myself up for prep, and like I'll run some mini cut before, so that this just allows me to have a lot more kick for that final leg. So, and it saves muscle. I really do believe it saves muscle because, dude, like, yeah, it's those last 5 pounds. Like, I think, like, well, not necessarily 5 pounds. So we'll say like the last like 3 to 4% of body weight that you have to lose. Like that's the dangerous bit. That's where you can lose progress. And if you've lost 20% of your body weight just to get to that point, you're not going to have much kick. And those are usually the cases where like people lose muscle. So, so yeah, we're gonna try to keep it cleaner. We'll see how it goes. I am a lot more patient with my progressions now, right? Because when you really think about it, like you're adding grams of muscle, right? So, like, what should that look like when it comes to your performance? It should kind of sort of be like, weigh-ins when you're losing weight, where it's like, okay, these numbers are like slowly disappearing, and this number you're seeing it more often. Like that probably is more of a 1-to-1 when it comes to how or at what rate we actually grow. So, at this point, I'm not rushing anything. I'm not trying to lift weights that I guess are entertaining or for the pleasure of others, or to like show other people around me like how strong I am. It's like it's like a new rep happens. It's because like the proper adaptations are taking place.
Yeah, it's if you're meeting the thresholds for being stressful enough, that the progressive overload is just a sign that you've been doing that for long enough now. So that's been, I think, really helpful for a lot of lifters where they felt like they were always like chasing that higher number and every week trying to do that. It's like, it just becomes very unrealistic once you've been doing this for a few years. And so if you're getting that stimulus, it's just a matter of time until you're going to hit that like PR, and it's a sign that you're growing. So that's very exciting. And I guess people will be interested. I think you also mentioned this as well. You eyeing up 2024. Is that right? Is that the next season that you're thinking to do?
Yeah, 2024. That means prep would start somewhere in May, June next year, which, as just it goes by really quick. Sounds like a long time, but bodybuilding time, not so much. I just had a good time with it, man. Like it was so much fun. And my girlfriend enjoyed it. Like we got to travel and do things, so that'll be a big thing. It's like I want to do a show up in Europe, and I think there'll be some available by then. So you only get so many preps, man. Like I'm starting to realize that, and it's probably why I probably want to compete every other year going forward. Maybe in my 50s every year, because I'll have nothing else better to do at that point. But yeah, I want to enjoy these because, again, like they're so memorable in their own way, and I want to add to that photo album. So yeah, at this point, 2024 is what we're thinking.
Yeah. That's exciting because that is the year I'm eyeing up as well. So that'll be cool. If not that I'm going to be stepping on stage with you, because I don't know how that would even happen.
If all things go well, although I shouldn't be in your weight class. Like
No.
I ended up in that deathly middle weight class this last year. I should have just done something about that. But you never know. That'd be a ball.
Yeah, no, it would be like a dream come true if I can compete like with yourself and like some of the greats. Like again, for me, like if I'm not, it's like the pro card will come to me if I can make it. But like we'll see what happens because you don't have control over that element. And yeah, I was going to bring up actually because you were not thinking you'd be a middleweight, but I guess you didn't manipulate body weight to try and make sure you're a lightweight or anything like that. But were you the lightest in the class in the end, if you know?
I think I was like near the lightest. A few other guys got screwed as well, but they were shorter than me, man. I was the I was like among the tallest, but among the lightest. So that's not a good place to be. Yeah, I mean, speaking of like your like the internal parts of you and the fight or flight, like I never have a hard time going, even when I'm prepping, like with regularity. But for some reason, like we land in LA, and like my body was just like frozen. Um, and I was right next to like a CVS pharmacy. I could have gone a non-stimulant laxative, and that would have like put me there. So I knew as soon as I weighed in, I'm like, okay, I am probably like, it's probably like an 80-20 chance, like that I'm 20% that I'm gonna be a lightweight. And had I weighed in, I think I missed about 2 pounds, and I would have been a lightweight. But honestly, it was at the end, like I think I know where I would have placed in the lightweights, but that was personally is kind of like the IFBB card versus like me doing well at Worlds. Like I think to the more lay people, it wouldn't make sense. But like for me internally, like I would much rather win my class at Worlds than get an IFBB pro card. Like that's just me personally, and because of how I see and view the landscape, and I understand like what talent looks like whether it's enhanced or not. So that was more rewarding to like at least break the top 5 in a class that I didn't belong with some like really, really amazing bodybuilders. I felt like I was getting away with murder in a way. Like, yeah. So.
From looking at it from the outside in, obviously it's a bit different when you're there. The middleweights, I mean, it often is, I guess, but it definitely looked like the most overall competitive class, even though the winner of the middles didn't win the overall. I mean, he certainly pushed for the overall, and I mean, he's got overalls coming to him because he was outstanding. But I mean, just people know how good you are, Alberto, and to come 5th in that class just says the caliber of like the rest of the top, the other 4.
Middleweights is it's a death sentence, man. It's like you get the best of everything. Because sometimes the guys, when they get too big, it's like they have these more robust frames, so they kind of lose a little bit of that X frame. And you know, there's a lot of X frame in the lighter weight classes, typically a lot more symmetry, but the middleweights, it's kind of a mixture of everything. And like kind of goes to like, so the guy that won the year before ended up placing 8th. Like there's no room for error in that class.
Yeah.
There's no room for error. So it was a total dogfight. And I mean, it was fun. Next time I'll try to be in my weight class because that was crazy. But yeah, the middleweights, geez, like it's always the class to watch at a big pro show. And again, I can't say it enough. Like if you can go to a world championship event, like it's cheap. Like it's like, I think it's right up there with anything else in sports, especially if this is what you do. It's like, go. It's like the ticket's gonna be like $50 or something, and you know you can have some really good seats. But yeah, no, those middleweights, Steve, they're ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, it's something to say the guy that won it now came 8th in that pro class. Like that says it all. How even, I mean, I guess the further we get away from COVID and everything that happened there, the kind of, I think last year was the first year it probably like fully normalized. I don't know, like it wasn't terrible years before, but I don't know the numbers, but I imagine they were higher. And so that just draws in and higher caliber and all of those elements. And I don't know where I heard it, but I remember hearing something along the lines of when you're kind of judging the amateur classes, you're sort of looking for strengths and who's the winner. Mm-hmm. Whereas when you're looking at a pro class, you're looking for like who's got weaknesses, who can just like drop them out, and to hide those weaknesses then becomes like or not have weaknesses is something you have to really think about.
Yeah, there's no positive reinforcement that it's like they want to punish you for every little error you make. That's the difference, because you should be, when you're pro, it's like you should do everything well. So whatever you don't, they're just not going to let it go. So pro classes are actually in some ways like easier to judge because you dog people for the most minuscule things.
And on the point of obviously you're looking to compete next year, we mentioned you're training 3 days per week. Is there anything you're doing with your training, or any like areas that you're trying to bring up, and anything you're doing specifically to try and get that?
Yeah. So the focus is going to be pecs. It might not seem like it when you look at the program, but pecs, I'm trying to find a good movement for it. I think I finally found it. It's this one old machine that I think it's going to work out. We'll see. But 3 days a week, it kind of is minimal volume, I'd say, on average. It's funny because, like, you know, when I write programs for people, it's like I don't ever like count how many sets they're doing of anything. Like, it's just, you just kind of know this looks right or this doesn't, right? Like, you kind of know it's going to fall somewhere in like that recommended range.
Yeah.
But it's definitely on the lower end. So I think it's maybe about 6 sets per, yeah, per body part. Yeah, 6 sets total, like each week. 3 days a week. I'm really focusing on things that really challenge the muscle in the lengthened position. And on top of that, also spending extra time there with like these long pauses. The long pauses, you know, it's like I really don't care how strong I am no more. Like I've done my fair share of like strength feats. So it's like I don't need to have anyone see me RDL 600 pounds. It's like I'll do my 400 pounds with like a pause, and like if anything, it makes it easier to warm up to. It's safer, arguably, right? So but yeah, a lot of prioritizing the lengthened portion of it, which I think maybe when it comes to my programming, there's so much of that it's like, you know, maybe you're getting ahead of yourself, but it's like I can't wait for research, Steve. I can't. It's like I have this window, I have this career, and it's like I'm not going to wait until it's like, you know, everyone's like giving me the green light. It's like, you know, once you get to that advanced stage, you're out there turning stones, trying to see what works. Because one thing I learned from COVID, like I keep this muscle for the most part. Like I hardly trained during COVID, and I probably downgraded to like 80% of what I was. Like I had a 40-pound kettlebell. That's what I had. And some bands that were a pain to use. Like I hardly ever, I didn't really take that many steps back. And then like within 2 weeks of like normal training, like I'm like, oh, it's just like my muscles were flat this whole time. So I can't get any worse. It's largely experimental to some extent. The how much I'm biasing the lengthened stuff, but it's like I can't wait. Like I'm sorry, guys. It's like if I'm a little ahead of myself, it's like I can't wait for things to be like 100% confirmed, because I am out here trying to beat these guys that, like, unless you've been around the sport and seen these freaks, like you just wouldn't understand. Like they are. It doesn't matter what they do. Like we can't coach them to do a bad job. Like we can't. Like they're that freaking good. So. We'll see if it works. The 3 days a week is more of a longevity thing, I think.
Okay.
Where it's like if I can do that, maybe that bottleneck, like it eventually gets all bodybuilders where, you know, the joints just eventually are like peace. Maybe I can delay that a little bit, and if it works as well as I hope it does, imagine being able to prep training 3 days a week. Like that would be okay. Maybe it'll drive my food down a little bit, but at this point, I don't care. Food's here sometimes, it's gone other times, whatever. Like that would definitely make it like a lot smoother.
When I think of 3 days, I struggle with it with like I would say the mental component. I don't know if, because I know training for you, I mean, obviously for anyone listening, probably it's like the best part of your day. Is that something you struggle with or struggled with, or have you found it actually to be a fine transition?
You know what? I think it's made me like appreciate it more when I do train, because it's like I only have so many sets, so many reps. Like, because even that's kind of on the minimalistic side, or it would be viewed that way. So I don't know. It's kind of like, like I remember growing up, like we were only allowed to watch 30 minutes of TV. Like that was it. So to me, whenever like here's the show I picked for my 30-minute slot, it was an experience. Like there I was just lost in that moment. Whereas for like all my friends that I went to school, they could spend 4 hours like watching TV. So it's like they almost like took it for granted in a way. So like now when I'm in there, it's like, oh, this is like the world just like it extra disappears. Like everything. Like, I take nothing. My loading of my plates, like that is a pleasure. So yeah, I think at the end, it's just kind of reframe things in my mind a little bit. If I do add days, it'll be solely for that reason, because I feel better when I exercise generally. Yeah, like I think it was Dr. Benhouse, like he mentioned something about like if I train just 15 minutes in the morning or something, I'm a better person that day. Like
Yeah.
right? So it's kind of like that. I am doing cardio like to kind of fill that void a little bit, but I
Right.
don't enjoy it like weightlifting. But yeah, no, I appreciate my training more than ever. Like that's for sure.
Yeah, that makes sense to me, when like distance makes the heart grow fonder type of thing.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
And I guess also when you're, like you said, you're focusing on the lower end of volume, the quality of the work can just be that much higher because you can just focus that much more. Is it still twice per week frequency for muscle groups, or are some even at one with that split?
My legs are everything in the legs is basically one. But all upper body is, yeah, it gets trained twice ish a week, you could say. Um, yeah, that's been a little weird because it's been years since I've done that. But yeah, yeah, no complaints. The leg days can be a little daunting. Like, and I almost feel like a sellout to like our tribe when people ask
Right.
me, "What do you have?" And I can't say, something like extra foo like quad dominant lower body day. Like it's, I have a leg day, bro.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah.
And it's hard. I mean, I guess that's one of the thoughts I always have, is when like higher frequencies allowed you to spread that volume out to keep it higher quality. But I guess you've come to the conclusion you can still get, like, you don't need that much volume. It doesn't need to spread that much. So you can actually get it all done in those 3 single sessions, and there's nothing more needed.
Yeah. And arguably, honestly, full body probably, like when I see the layout on my stuff, I'm like, yeah, it'd probably make the most sense. But I don't enjoy full body.
Yeah.
People also fatigue differently. Like I remember when hit cardio was a thing, I remember everyone be like, it messes me up. And like hit cardio did nothing to me. Like I could do intervals every day. I'd be fine. So I don't fatigue at all. But something about like the full body, like it just locks me up. Like I can't do one sort of chest variation on Monday and then Wednesday do another. Like I can, but it doesn't feel good. Not for me personally. So
Yeah.
also there's that bit, but arguably I should be doing full body.
Yeah, I think that's nice you would actually introduce that, where it's like, where like the average and the theory would suggest, but you aren't that, and so you understand actually you're working towards what's working for you at the time. And that's I know for the lengthened partials, I think you've actually been doing them for like, I don't know, maybe even, I don't know if I'm right in saying like a year. Like you've been doing some experimentation with it for a much longer time than I have. It's only recently where like the meta-analysis came out, and then I've been talking to people further about it, where I'm like, oh, I'm convinced to the point where I'm going to start implementing it. It's only the last maybe 4 months I've been like playing around with some of it. And yeah, I like that's kind of my perspective on it too, where I'm like, I'm not going to wait until it's like 100% confirmed to give it a shot. I'm like, I want to be on, not the cutting edge is the wrong word, because that sounds like a marketing term, but I want to be like, I don't want to miss out on anything here if there's something to it.
Yeah, and it's one of those decisions where it's like, it's arguably not going to make you worse.
Yeah.
So, why not? But for the back specifically, I've been doing that. And I remember there was this like hiatus, like when my back went away for a few years, like somewhere in the middle of my career. But at the start, like when I was an amateur, it was one of my best body parts. But I was doing a lot of those like cheaty rows.
Yes.
And when I think about it, it's like, okay, because the bros, sometimes they definitely are onto things, but it's not the purest extract of what it is that we're looking for. So like when I look at my cheaty rows, it's like, oh, I was using a load that was challenging enough for the lengthened position, but it was very crude because it was my ankles, my knees, my hips, my spine, like they were all helping me move, but it was arguably challenging enough for that lengthened position. So now it's like, okay, like we can see why that claim is not like totally bizarre when someone's like, I started doing, these cheating bent over barbell rows and things started to grow. Okay, like I can see why, but I think this is a more sophisticated, refined way of getting that done.
I think that I have not heard anyone describe it so well as that in terms of like learning like the pros and then refining it. That's the way I was thinking about it too, where like using momentum, you can almost make like a bent over row into your like prime row, where you're making like biasing the lengthened position by driving momentum in the short position to make that easier. You almost intuitively have to do that to make it feel productive. If you're super strict with it, it just ends up feeling a bit like wrong is the only word I could call it. So yeah, it's funny when, again, the science just starts maybe confirming, like you say, refining some of what people were doing in the past. And that happens so often, actually.
Very often. So yeah, I'm always open to those like analytical bros.
Yeah.
And especially like enhanced guys with pretty good genetics who are like just like they're good at observing things, because with them, like, okay, they hop on this like 12-week blast and they've done it before or something. Like they can see things happen because they have good genetics and because they have these enhancements. It's like they can spot things like really quick. It's like, oh, when I started doing sissy squats with these pauses, like my legs blew up. It's like, so like sometimes it's worth listening. They might not have it all the way right, but I mean, they're invested in their physique. Like they want to be better, and they're going to try to decipher, although it could be kind of messy sometimes, like what is actually working here. So if you view it through that lens, like some of those individuals can be like highly, highly valuable.
That's really interesting. I haven't viewed it from that lens. And actually, in recent times, I'd been increasingly frustrated with some of the enhanced side and what they'd say, because I'm just like, man, you're so far from being natural that no longer it really computes. Not the whole, obviously, enhanced side, but I think where you refine it to that individual, like you mentioned, that makes tons of sense, because I'm always, again, with like lengthened partials and experimenting with it, it's like, well, can I compare that to what I did like last mesocycle, not using it? Not really. Like it's like it takes so long to be able to compare these differences. Like I know like Brian Bornstein, who he's doing like an arm experiment where he's training one arm and not the other, and I'm like, you're gonna have to do that for quite a long time to see like a measurable change in your arm size. Maybe more time than I'm probably willing to commit.
Yeah, he's a soldier for that one, man. Yeah. That one's nuts. But it's part of this is, I think it attracts a group of people who are just very curious.
Yeah.
And he's been training for a while, so it's one of those things. Like, I'm not going to get worse. Like I'm still going to be jacked at the end of the day. Let's figure this out. But yeah. I mean, my 3-day thing, it's kind of an experiment. We'll see. I was supposed to cut it off. I think I said January initially. Like it started in November, and here it is. Like we're in the middle of March, and I'm still running it, and I see it continuing.
That's very cool. Yeah, I think a lot of the changes you've made, also, like you said, for longevity purposes, they kind of complement one another in terms of like, yeah, I mean, I guess actually that's the question that came into my head was the powerlifter in you. I guess, is that a scratch that you need to itch at any point, or are you kind of done with the powerlifting and you're gonna like go 100% into bodybuilding now?
I've never liked powerlifting, Steve. It was one of those things where I did it because all my friends were doing it. Like it was peer pressure. But I can think of one meet where I didn't train hard the day before. So like that's where my mind was at. And I mean, I got some valuable lessons from it. It's like I'm tremendous at bracing for my RDLs because I picked up these skills from powerlifters, and like I know how to get myself strong and get my athletes strong if I need to. And I'm a big fan of the sport. I just don't like it for me.
Yeah.
So no, I mean, I think if I feel like at some point this off season, like I can deadlift 600 conventional for reps, I'm gonna do it just like for that guerrilla action. But no, I love powerlifting. Like they got that big Sheffield meet coming up, and
yeah,
I don't know what time it's gonna be, but I'm not gonna miss that. I adore the sport. Like some of my favorite athletes, like they're on that side. But nah, I'm good. I'll leave that up to the like truly, like, because people think like bodybuilders are strong, and it's like, okay, it's kind of like track and field strong, and then there's other sports where there's people who are individually fast. It's like there's a difference between like track and field fast and this football, that football, or basketball fast and track and field fast. Same thing with powerlifting. Like there's, if I dedicated the next 10 years to and I'm not a super weak guy to powerlifting, I couldn't even compete with the juniors. Like those guys, they're just somewhere else. So I'll just watch from the stands.
I think it was like 10 years ago or something around that, it just exploded. The powerlifting scene just got like ultra competitive. Because I think there was a time, I think my first powerlifting meet, I was close to being able to like qualify for nationals or something, and I look back and I'm like, those numbers would be nowhere close now. Like they would not scrape in at all. But I didn't realize because I know Jeff isn't particularly fond of powerlifting either. Like I mean, similar to you, I think he enjoys the sport, but he doesn't do it. Like he doesn't want to compete in it. So I didn't realize you were in the same position as him. One final question I thought was interesting, just as like a sign off, I guess, is for 2023, outside of, like you mentioned, probably meditating, sleep, bigger priority, mentioned some things with training. Nutritionally, it sounds like the biggest change for you, I don't know if it's a big change, but it's a change. You mentioned not having alcohol. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that and what brought that on.
Man, this is like, I think the wonderful part about like being a bodybuilder, especially a seasoned bodybuilder, where things just move real slow. And like, if you were to describe to people that don't do this, like how much trouble you're going through to, see minuscule progress. So like, pretty soon you have an intervention, with all your friends and family, right? You need to cut out this bodybuilding thing. But I think it makes it so that I'm not afraid like of new challenges and new things, because anything else I do at this point, it's like, it's going to be very linear in regards to like just getting better. I don't know, like if I want to learn French or Italian, like I know that, hey, it's going to progress faster than my bodybuilding. And like, to me, that's like light speed. Right. And with no drinking, it was, so in my family, like there is like, we have issues with alcoholism, and I can definitely tell, like when I drink alcohol, it's not a downer for me. Like it feels like a stimulant. Like it's amazing. But I've been aware of this. I've always kind of kept it under control, but it just dawned on me. I'm like, could you not drink for a while? Like I wonder if I could do this. And then like the bodybuilder, it's like a challenge. And then I couldn't get it out of my head. So the last drop of alcohol I had was Halloween, right after the show I did in Canada. And my only regrets is that it was only one shot of like their top shelf tequila. I wish it would have been two, because that ended up being actually my final drink. So so it's like, okay, nothing more this year. And then I'm like, should I do next year? Should I just do a calendar year? And then I was like, you already got that idea in your head the whole year. You're not going to let it go. So just do it. So it's been kind of just a personal challenge. I've never really been a super big drinker. I think even previously I enjoy it, but I'm also wary of like what I'm prone to, right? So I'd drink like maybe once a month or something like that. At most, I would have a weird week where maybe I had three really good beers, but like that was it. So it was more so that it was just like, hey, like whenever sometimes you have this idea in your head, and the fact that it kind of makes you chicken out a little bit, it's like, okay, maybe there's something there. I need to look into this. And I can only thank bodybuilding for that, because I mean, we do it all the time, like every day. It's like there's certain reps that we take sometimes in our training where every cell in your body is like, put this shit away, man. Like don't do this. And it's one of the perks of being a bodybuilder. Like there's whispers there, like you really listen closely, a lot of life lessons. And to me, as soon as that popped up in there, I'm like, okay, now I got to do this, because there's a part of me that doesn't want to.
I think so. It sounds like a big part of it is actually just that like challenge, like the self-discipline. Because when I hear it, it appeals to me. And I then start thinking about other things I could apply it to, like no caffeine, for this year. I'm like, oh shit, like, do I want to commit to that? That's a scary prospect. No caffeine. Alcohol is a little bit more. I mean, I'm not a big drinker at all for a long time, but it's not. I'm trying to think if there's something similar, because it's like enough of it's because you obviously don't drink super regularly, and it's all wins by not having it. Save money, like it's not great for your health, whatever. It's like something you do enjoy, but it's not something you need. So it's like, I don't know, identifying something that's like something that you can remove, like, and you can win at that, and then maybe you can move on to larger obstacles. I think just for self-development, that's really cool. So yeah, I'm glad I asked about that, because it's an interesting, there's something, I don't know if there's something out there with some podcasts I've been listening to where they've been going more into those, like, kind of disciplining yourself and those sort of aspects. So, but I definitely, after hearing it, it makes just complete sense. You, like you said, with training, you kind of reduce your access to it. You start enjoying that thing more. So you kind of have to play like yin and yang with life in some ways.
Yeah, no, I haven't voiced it like too much, the not drinking, because I did the countdown a few days ago, and it was like 130 something days. Because most of the time when people, like, someone's like, I quit drinking, it's because, like, you know, people can be like, oh, he must have messed up, like he had a baby somewhere, lost all his money. So no, thankfully it never got to that point. But yeah, it's man, there's so many wonderful perks to training outside of like the benefit itself. And I think that's why, like, dude, like, if you couldn't make any more gains from this point onwards, like, you would still train just as hard, just because it's such it really centers you, and it helps you gain perspective and traction when it comes to anything else in life.
Absolutely. I'm going to call it there. I've been taking an hour of your time, and like ever, I feel like I can talk to you forever, Alberto. And thank you for taking the time. I think just some really cool takeaways, and just recapping your shows and the experience there. And then I'm excited to follow along 2023, and then, potentially see you maybe even in real life in 2024 on stage. That'd be exciting, but definitely going to be watching along. If people want to keep up with you, what you're doing, I guess you've also got your Twitter. If that's new, I can make sure that's linked as well. But where should people be following?
Twitter's cool. I have like 400 followers on me, so help me out, Steve. I'm most active on Instagram, and then we have our website, 3D Muscle Journey, where basically anything we put out is going to be like dispersed through there. So but yeah, follow me on Twitter. And the Twitter thing, again, like we discussed this, it's just more so, let me throw out topics, because sometimes I'm a little disconnected from like what everyone else wants, and whatever gets like thumbs up, likes, it's like, okay, I need to speak more about these things, because sometimes we're so deep in the woods, dude. Like, here we are talking about like humorous lengths on like side relaxed poses, right? So it just keeps me in touch with what the audience actually wants, because I feel good when I'm helpful.
Makes a lot of sense. Awesome. Yeah, I'll make sure that's all linked as well, and obviously your YouTube, so people can kind of check over the vlogs and things that you've been doing pretty darn regularly, actually, which is really cool as well and valuable. So yeah, again, thank you, Alberto. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll catch you in the next one. Take care.
Losing weight fast while maintaining muscle mass. Sounds too good to be true, doesn't it? It isn't though. It's reality, and we know how to do it, and we will help you achieve this. The Minicut Movement is an 8-week fat loss program to make you lose a huge chunk of fat while maintaining muscle mass at the same time. We will support you from the beginning to the end, so that you see the results you would like to and come out of it much stronger. You'll receive a fully automated spreadsheet that is based on your nutritional needs. You can choose between 6 different male and female training templates. Over 30 videos will guide you through each and every single step of the Minicut, so that you're getting the most out of your journey and that you always know what to do. But the best thing is that you can start whenever you want. The Minicut Movement is open 24/7. So if you want to learn more, or you're ready to sign up, hit the link in the description below. So let's revive stronger together.